All right, today we've got a real scientific detective story for you. It's a case that starts with a single family, 3 young brothers, and a medical puzzle that had doctors completely stumped for years. This is the story of how some truly cutting-edge technology cracked a deeply personal and incredibly complex genetic code.
So our story starts with one family. They have 3 sons, and all 3 of them share the same diagnosis, a very severe form of autism spectrum disorder. For the parents and for their doctors, one question just hung over everything. Why? What was going on here?
Okay, so what you're looking at here is the family tree, what scientists call a pedigree. The squares are the males, the circles are females, and those filled-in squares in the bottom row, those are the 3 affected brothers. But now look at the 2 generations above them. No one else has the condition. This was a huge red flag, a really unusual pattern, and the first major clue that this was anything but a typical case.
And that leads to the big question, right? The one that drove this entire investigation. If it didn't seem to be passed down from the parents or their grandparents in the usual way, then where in the world did it come from?
And we have to be clear, this condition was severe. All 3 brothers shared these exact, profound clinical features. We're talking severe intellectual disabilities, and they never developed functional language. On top of the classic autism symptoms, they all had epilepsy that was very difficult to treat. The fact that their symptoms were so similar and so severe just made finding an answer that much more urgent.
So to crack this case, the scientific detectives needed to bring out the big guns. They turned to a technology that could literally let them read the family's entire biological instruction book from cover to cover, letter by letter.
That technology is called whole genome sequencing. Now just think of your DNA as this massive encyclopedia for how to build and run your body. WGS is basically a superpowered scanner that can read every single one of the 3 billion letters in that encyclopedia, all in the hunt for a single spelling mistake that could be causing the whole problem.
So the game plan was simple, at least in theory. Sequence all 3 brothers, line up their genetic codes side by side, and hunt for one single shared typo that could be the root cause of everything.
But you know, saying that is one thing. Doing it, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack the size of a mountain. I mean, the amount of data you get from sequencing 3 entire genomes is just astronomical. The scientists had to figure out a way to systematically sift through it all.
So right off the bat, in each brother, they find about 4.1 million genetic differences compared to the standard human genome. That's millions of potential clues for each boy. I mean, where do you even begin with a number like that?
Well, the first big filter they applied was to only look at variants that all 3 brothers had in common. Then they narrowed it down even more by focusing only on genes that were already known to have some link to autism. And boom, just like that, they went from millions down to just over 53,000 possible candidates. It's a huge step, but still way too many to check one by one.
Next up, they got even more aggressive. They tossed out any genetic changes that are common in the general population, because, right, a rare disease probably isn't caused by a common variant. And they focused only on what they call high-impact typos, the kind that would really break a gene. And just like that, the list shrank to only 6 suspects.
And after carefully looking at those final 6, one just jumped off the page. It was the only one that perfectly fit every piece of the biological puzzle. They had found it. After sifting through billions of data points, the entire search had led them to a single, solitary letter.
And right there, that was the aha moment, the breakthrough. The scientists had found their smoking gun, a tiny mutation in a gene that plays an absolutely critical role in how the brain develops, a gene called SHNG3.
Okay, so what you're looking at here is the raw data from the sequencing. See that little hiccup in the pattern? That's it. That's the culprit. A single letter, a C, was just gone, deleted from the genetic code. Just one missing letter out of 3 billion.
So a single missing letter, what's the big deal? Well, it's a huge deal. The top bar here shows what the normal, full-length SHNG3 protein is supposed to look like. But look at the bottom bar. Because of that one missing letter, the genetic recipe gets scrambled and it creates a premature stop sign. The protein gets cut short, making it totally useless.
And why is SHNG3 so important? Well, you can think of it as a crucial piece of scaffolding at the synapse. That's the critical connection point where brain cells communicate with each other. Without a working version of this protein, the brain's entire communication network just can't form correctly, which leads directly to the severe symptoms the brothers were experiencing.
So, you'd think, case closed, right? The mystery is solved. But nope, there was one last, really confusing twist to this story. One final piece of the puzzle that just did not fit. So, naturally, the scientists tested the parents' DNA from their blood, and the mutation was just gone. Nowhere to be found. Look at the data here. See the clean, single peaks in the mother's and father's DNA? Now compare that to the jumbled, overlapping peaks for the brothers. It was a real head-scratcher.
So that left them with this huge final question. How on earth did all three kids inherit the exact same mutation that their parents didn't seem to have? Well, the answer lies in this fascinating and pretty rare biological phenomenon.
The answer is something called germline mosaicism. It's when a genetic mutation happens early in a parent's development, but it only affects their germline cells. That's the cells that go on to become sperm or eggs. So while a blood test from the parent would look totally normal, a fraction of their reproductive cells are actually carrying the mutation. And this is so important because it explains how a mutation that seems brand new can actually show up more than once in a family.
And once they understood that, the whole puzzle finally clicked into place. The case was solved. But, the story doesn't end there, because the impact of this discovery went way beyond the science. It's really about what finding that one single missing letter meant for this family.
Imagine, for years, this family lived with total uncertainty. Finding this specific mutation in the SHANK3 gene, it finally gave them an answer. A real, concrete answer. It wasn't something they did or didn't do, it was a specific biological event they could finally put a name to. And with that came a powerful form of closure.
And, a line from the actual scientific paper really brings home the human side of this. For this family, the diagnosis meant that, quote, almost a decade of anxiety associated with diagnostic uncertainties could be alleviated. It's just a powerful reminder that behind every data point, there's a human story.
And that really leaves us with this powerful idea to think about. This one story shows the incredible power we now have to read our own genetic instruction books. It just makes you wonder, as this technology gets even better and even cheaper, how many other medical mysteries, how many other families' decades-long questions are we finally going to be able to answer?